let us just look at the casualties now. Over 1,300 Palestinians have been killed in this so-called retaliatory action of Israel. Over 4,000 have been injured. 4,000 apartment buildings have been destroyed, including 5 UNRWA schools and the UN headquarters itself, destroyed by direct hits by Israel. 50,000 people are homeless, and 400,000 people are without any running potable water. If Gaza was not a humanitarian disaster during the 18 months of siege that it was under prior to the attack, there's absolutely no question that is that the sort of response, setting aside what the legal postures are and the legal rights of both parties, is that an appropriate use of so-called self-defense if Israel were entitled to self-defense in this?
I will come back to that. My answer to that is essentially yes, it is entitled to self-defense, and unfortunately in situations like Gaza, there are going to be civilian casualties. I want to go back, since you had some difficulty in accepting the definition of Hamas as a terrorist organization. We got to go back to the incident that led to them being branded a terrorist organization. At the conclusion of the Intifada, the Israelis and Fatah had agreed to a ceasefire, had agreed to trying to get the peace process back in some sort of working order. And the suicide bombings had stopped when all of a sudden there was a suicide bombing done by Hamas in a bus in East Jerusalem, killing, I forget the exact number of Jewish people, but I guess there's another old saying that can be invoked, and that is, if it looks like a duck, and walks like a duck, and acts like a duck, then you can call it a duck. And I think that's exactly the case with terrorism and Hamas. Now, as far as the most recent round of violence and hostilities, will probably differ on whether Israel was justified in coming in there. I think when your cities are being attacked by rockets, the rockets are getting closer to serious population centers, even within 10 miles of Jerusalem. You don't have to wait until the Holocaust occurs again before you take remedial action to make sure it doesn't. And I think I feel terrible about every civilian who's injured, about every child who's injured, about every child who goes hungry, about every child who loses his or her parents. And I only hope that the minimal objective of Israel was accomplished by this action, and that is to erect a barrier of deterrence against future Hamas attacks on civilian populations. If that was accomplished, then even these deaths, tragic as they are, will not have been in vain.
First of all, let me remind you that the Palestinians did not cause the Holocaust, and from their perspective,
Hamas has endorsed it, though.
But the Palestinians had nothing to do with the Holocaust, and they feel that they are paying the price for the West's Holocaust on the Jews by losing their homeland. Let me come back to just very quickly a couple of points that you made. It's extremely difficult for me to accept the perspective that a ratio of 100 Palestinian deaths to 1 Israeli, and it's far beyond that now, but that a ratio of 100 deaths to 1 Israeli is justified. That's certainly not the perspective of international humanitarian law. And Israel's attack on Gaza violates every one of the key principles of humanitarian law. The principle of proportionality, the principles of distinction. There's no question in my mind that war crimes have been committed here. Israel has targeted facilities that are off limits under international law, schools, UN facilities that were known to Israel, that were very clearly marked, and Israel claimed at one point when the UN UNRWA school, the first UNRWA school, was hit, that it was shelling that school because Hamas fighters were shooting from inside. Later, it retracted that statement as being untrue. It actually has absolutely no right under humanitarian law to target a UN facility, and the UN has made that very clear. So to suggest, I think my response to your assertion that these deaths are worthwhile if they stop the rockets, I would ask you if the roles were reversed, and if these were Israeli children dying at the rate that the Palestinian children have been killed here.
Israeli children have had a lot of practice in dying at the hands of the Palestinian terrorists. There were schools invaded in the 70s and into the 80s. There were rockets fired, Katyushas from across the border in Lebanon. We don't have to speculate how we would respond to the death of Israeli children at the hands of terrorists. We've had plenty of practice in doing that.